New episode of The Dime. Kwab, hot take to start the show. What you got?
The All-Star game, it's not going to get any better. So stop complaining. Everybody else complaining about the All-Star game this weekend. Stop it. It's not going to get any better. These players are not going to go out and play like defense for 4 quarters. It's not going to happen.
You don't know that,
What
Kwab.
it is.
You don't know that.
They might make there's like some slight changes that could be made to make the game better in terms of like maybe not having like a combined score going to the fourth quarter. So maybe like each quarter, whoever wins the quarter gets like 2 points. So that maybe whoever the most you can lead is like 6 points going to fourth quarter. So it's a close game. But nobody's going to be out there taking charges, playing like the try hard in a game is usually Giannis, and he was hurt. LeBron hurt his finger trying to block a shot. Nobody's gonna try. I'm tired of seeing all these like people break down. It's like, what happened to our All-Star game in '93? We were out there like blocking shots and like stop. It's an exhibition game. It's supposed to be fun. Relax.
But what happened, Kwab? I want to know what happened. Like, where did the competitive spirit go? Where did the Mamba mentality go, Kwab? I want to know what's going on with these players. Do they not care anymore? Do they not care about the fans? Is it just being in Utah? Was it the energy of Salt Lake City? What's going on?
It's too much. There was too many Malones post.
We'll leave it at that. We're gonna blame it on the Malones, specifically Carl though. Post is cool. Post is cool.
Yeah, I don't even want to mention his name. That's nasty work the NBA was doing. Just show him off.
Right.
But yeah, it's no, like relax. Everybody relax. It's supposed to be a week just to, the week off for players. Luka was ready to go to Mexico. Like nobody was taking it serious.
Well, I think they should start taking it seriously because it's an all-star weekend that I used to look forward to, and now it's just absolutely terrible. There's no big names in the dunk contest. I think the three-point contest is cool. I think the skills competition is despicable. We should abolish the skills challenge and try to replace it with something good. I would love a one-on-one competition, but no all-star wants to get embarrassed. Jason Tatum and Devin Booker going against each other. They don't want to lose that matchup because it's bragging rights. And you know how it is nowadays where it's like, well, if you don't win a ring, you're not this, you're not that. Now I can't even imagine what it would be if you can't win a one-on-one competition, or if CJ McCollum loses to like Emmanuel quickly in a one-on-one competition, what that'll do for him. So I think you're right. I think we have to accept it as an NBA community that the NBA All-Star Weekend is just never going to be the same. It's just a vibe. It's a barbecue. That's what it is at this point.
It's a vibe in Utah. That's all it was.
In Utah. So whatever vibe it is, Utah. You know what vibe is it in Utah? Jazz. Jazz is never a vibe in Utah because there's no jazz in Utah. I will say that every time. There's no jazz. There's no jazz in Utah. They should change their name. It's the craziest name in sports. The Utah Jazz. Are you kidding me?
The Utah Rocky Mountaintops.
Something. There are no jazz clubs in Utah. You can't convince me otherwise. All right, all that and more next on The Dime.
You are now listening to The Dime with Josh Rodriguez, your weekly go-to podcast for all things NBA. And now, your host, Josh Rodriguez.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to The Dime, presented by the Balls Live Podcast Network. Which teams are we most disappointed in? Who can we see making a run during the NBA playoffs? And who are the top 10 teams heading into the final leg of the regular season? Kwab and I go pole dancing and give you our power rankings to close the show. But first, if you want to follow The Dime, you can on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at The Dime NBA. I'm Josh Rodriguez at Josh_Rodriguez_. He's Kwab at Kwab, aka Yes. You catch all episodes on YouTube on the Ball is Life Podcast Network. If you're listening to the show audio-wise, you can go on YouTube, just type in Ball is Life Podcast Network. We'll show up there. I also post highlights of the show on the Dime's YouTube channel, so search The Dime with Josh Rodriguez and follow that YouTube channel as well. Turn on notifications for the channel and look out for the latest episode of The Dime. Also, I want you to be a part of the show, so give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment, hot take, or question to be featured on a future episode of the show. Kwab, how are you, man? It's been a while.
It's been a while, man. I'm good. How's everything with you?
Everything's good. It feels good to be back. I was globetrotting for a little bit, but now I'm back in Los Angeles in front of my setup, ready to go, ready for the last leg of the NBA season. Are you ready to go pole dancing, my friend?
Let's do it.
You know you want it. It's time to go pole dancing. Get your mind out the gutter. We're talking about Twitter polls. My goodness.
All right, let's get on stage and hit the polls. I put up 3 polls on the show's Twitter account, and my followers and stray Twitter users made sure their voices were heard. Kwab, are you ready to go over the results?
Let's look at them.
All right, first poll. Here we go. Most disappointing team in the Eastern Conference. Coming in at last was the Toronto Raptors at 16%, the Hawks at 21.8%, followed by the Nets at 24.9%, and surprisingly, and this was surprising to me, Kwab, the Bulls at 37.3%. And this is the highest poll I've ever done. This is the most amount of participants we've ever had. 1,021 votes. I'm shocked, man. The Bulls, to me, I didn't know that people were this high going in on the season with the Chicago Bulls, but apparently there's a lot of disappointed Bulls fans out there. Kwab, what do you make of this?
I was confused, like that the Bulls got that many votes only because I feel like and we both realized this, knowing that they didn't have Lonzo. They're not gonna have Lonzo for the rest of the season. I think they just announced that today. The team was kind of like, I don't know, they're kind of where I kind of expected them to be. I'm not really shocked at where they are. Like,
yeah, like they were fluttering last year. It's not like they were some powerhouse team. Lonzo, we knew was injured going into the season, so it wasn't like he got hurt like halfway through the year or the beginning of the year, and then everything changed. I think Vucevic was also someone who everyone was like, oh, this is kind of working with him before the start of the season. So I am very shocked. I don't know if like this poll just hit Chicago specifically. But, I mean, I guess they're disappointing in the sense where maybe you could have made the argument that they'd be like a 6-7 seed, maybe 5-6-7 seed fighting for, that last spot where they don't play in the play-in. But to me, that's their ceiling. Their ceiling to me was always 6-7-8 seed. It was never like contender in the East.
Yeah, I don't know. What's crazy about it is that as a team, they're actually a really good defensive team, and they've just been struggling with playmaking and shooting. Two things.
They need a point guard.
They need a point guard. I mean, they just signed Pat Bev. That's not really going to.
Oh my God.
Answer that. But I think defensively and intensity wise, yeah, he's going to be Pat Bev. But that doesn't really answer the issues they've had. I thought like maybe the Hawks and the Nets would get more. I thought the Raptors would get more votes. Like
I thought for sure this would be 50% or more the Brooklyn Nets. And because listen, first of all, it's disappointing not because of like their record or anything like that. Obviously, their record is good enough to be in the playoffs right now. But to me, this is not just the most disappointing team of the year. This is the most disappointing team of all time. Period. There hasn't been one more disappointing team I could think of in the history of basketball than a team that looked like it was on the verge of making the NBA Finals and then gets blown up out of nowhere a couple weeks later. That has never happened. When has that happened?
Yeah, it's never happened. But also, this is the same. This is coming from a Nets fan. This is the same franchise that traded away everything and for an old KG, Paul Pierce, and ended up winning only like 12 games one year. Like
They made the second round that year, bro.
Yes,
they beat the Raptors in 7. They got Paul Pierce for that reason.
We got Paul Pierce to beat the Raptors. That's what we got. Paul Pierce mortgaged the future just to beat the Raptors. And then the two draft picks ended up being Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
No big deal.
Another pick ended up being Dame Lillard. Like, yeah, just no big deal. I still going back, but I was more shocked that the Bulls got this many votes. I didn't think, and actually you made a great point early episodes. You weren't that high on the Hawks. I just didn't think they would be struggling as much as they've been struggling now. They just fired Nate McMillan like a couple hours ago before we started recording this, which is hilarious. I don't want anybody to lose your job, but that was just funny. The Raptors have been weird all season. I thought they were gonna blow it up during the trade deadline. They were like, nah, we're just gonna bring back Jakob Poeltl. And
but I think that's a good move though. I mean, I don't know if it's a move to like make the playoffs and make noise in the East. I get what you're saying. I think they're better.
I understand.
I don't know why I fought so hard for Jakob Poeltl right there. I don't know why. Like
one of the issues they've had is like size of the center position. I get it. I completely understand. It's just the way they were last season and how well they played. What's his name's having a down year, even though it's his second year. Scotty Barnes hasn't played really well. He's been catching a lot of flack, where it's his second year in the league. They made it seem like they were either gonna trade Fred VanVleet, OG, Pascal. They were like, nah, Kim Birch, see you later. We got Jakob.
They made it seem like they were going to blow everything up for sure. And, to me, if it wasn't for the Nets, I would have voted for the Raptors in this poll. I was very high on the Raptors going into the season. If you haven't checked out my episode with Zach Wilson, which is actually the last episode I did before this one, which was months ago. Wow, it's been a long time. You would know how high I was on the Raptors and how highly I think of Pascal Siakam. And I think Fred VanVleet's a very underrated point guard. The problem is I think Nick Nurse deserves a lot of the blame here. You're throwing out lineups that are just like 6'7", 6'8" power forwards with no shooting. I mean, I've watched Raptor games where they closed with those lineups with Fred VanVleet sitting on the bench, and then you don't have a real center to kind of run any type of like pick and roll with it. They're very limited in what they can do with that type of offense and with that type of scheme. And I think, it goes back to last year when Nick Nurse kind of implemented that and he saw some success with it. And they kind of created this play style that he thought could carry over to this year, but it just wasn't really sustainable, and I was kind of fooled thinking that they could probably do that. They could kind of cause havoc and be tough matchups for teams, especially in the Eastern Conference, but it just really hasn't worked out. I think the addition of Pirtle would help them a lot, but this isn't a situation where they're like a 6 or 7 seed and that can bring up to a 4 seed and where they're dangerous. It's like, yeah, you bring in Pirtle and you might have a better, closing to the end of the season, but you're still a playing team. But I'm very for the record, if it wasn't for the Nets being the Nets this year, my answer would 1,000% been the Raptors.
Being the Nets. Yeah, exactly.
Nets. I also want to touch on Nate McMillan because, he just got fired by the Hawks. And, the Hawks, like you said, I wasn't high on the Hawks this year at all. I didn't like the acquisition of DeJounte Murray, not because I don't like DeJounte Murray, but to me, it just didn't make sense as a fit with Trae Young. And then you lose Kevin Huerter. He goes to Sacramento. You don't really have shooting there anymore. John Collins and Trae don't really have this type of chemistry that's anywhere near consistent. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not.
They've been trying to trade John Collins since his rookie year.
Yeah, John Collins has been on the trading block with Miles Turner for the past 8.5 years.
Exactly.
They both been. So to me, I don't want to throw it all on Nate. I don't watch enough Hawks games to be like, oh, Nate does this and he doesn't do this, and therefore he should be the one to go. But I do know that him and Trae Young don't really get along. How can you keep a coach that doesn't get along with his head coach? That begs the question. Is this another coach that Trae Young has gotten fired? I don't know. I don't know the details behind that. I'm not going to say Trae Young's a coach killer, but I do think if you're a fan of the Atlanta Hawks, yeah, you might be happy that Nate's gone, but I'm also kind of on edge and kind of just watching to see how Trae reacts to who the new head coach is and how he responds to him. One
of the last episodes I actually did with you, we actually were talking about the situation with Trae Young having to wasn't allowed at the game because he didn't show up to shoot around.
Yeah.
And we're going a little bit back and forth. And the point I was making was like, they didn't want that to come out because every time it comes out, it kind of shines a bad light on everything that's going on. So then it becomes, hey, they're not winning. It's Nate McMillan the problem. It's trade him. And now Nate is gone. And I saw somebody had tweeted out right after it happened was like, if it was a situation where Trae didn't want him there, he's out because if Trae walks in the front office and Trae, regardless of how bad he's played and the team has played this year, if your star player who's 28-10 every game walks in and it's like, yo, it's either Nate or me,
you got to coach. The coach has to go.
The coach is going to end up
going. It's what happened with Melo and D'Antoni. I mean, I lived through that with Melo and D'Antoni.
The coach
Carmelo Anthony got traded to the Knicks on this day, by the way. So shout out to the worst day of my life, 12 years ago. Melo got traded to the Knicks and just instantly didn't fit with Mike D'Antoni. That was a power struggle for a while. And then it's not a coincidence, and I give Melo credit for this. Is one thing I give credit to Melo for. Once D'Antoni was gone, he started balling with Woodson because he got a coach that he liked for a little bit at least. But we'll leave it at that. The Nets coming second to the Chicago Bulls as the most disappointing team. Also, I want to give a shout out to Mitch Buns at Mitch_Bundles. He dropped this comment in the thread. The only reason Bulls doing bad is because Lonzo Ball's injured. Other than that, they would be in the playoffs right now. So this goes to the expectations that we were talking about the Bulls that you and I just really didn't see. I wonder if Mitch is a Bulls fan, but do you agree with that if Lonzo was in the playoffs, that the Bulls would be in the if Lonzo was on the Bulls, that the Bulls would be in the playoffs right now?
He would definitely make a difference because him being in the lineup pushes everybody back to your natural positions, meaning like Alex Caruso or Ayo Dosunmu wouldn't be starting. They would be coming off the bench, bringing energy. And Lonzo gets like easy buckets, gets the ball moving. Like there's a couple if you watched them last year when Lonzo was healthy, there's possessions where Lonzo would find Zach LaVine for a back cut, that baseline back cut that Zach LaVine always does, and he gets a dunk. That's out of the playbook. Like, it's just little things that Lonzo does that would help the team. I don't know. I feel like they would have a better record if he wasn't injured.
I think the Bulls would have a better record for sure, 1,000%. How much better? I don't know. Right now, the Knicks are sitting in the sixth spot right now. They're 6 games above 500. I don't know if the Bulls would be around there, but I definitely think they'd be like maybe the 7-8 seed, 9 seed, around there with the Knicks, with the Knicks, Heat, Hawks, around that area. I think they might be better than the Hawks. I would say they'd probably be the 8 seed right now. I don't know if they'd be in the playoffs like Mitch said, but definitely better than they are. I mean, when you're missing a point guard, to me, that's the most important position on the court, at least. I mean, the most important player on the team is the best player. Doesn't matter what position they are. I think a lot of times we're like, well, the most important position is point guard. No, it's the, like, for the Nuggets, the most important position is the center because it's Jokic. You know what I mean? Like, he's your best player.
Who's also your pseudo point guard?
Who's what? Yeah, that's true.
Pseudo point guard.
That's a good point. It's a good point. But yeah, so to answer Mitch's question, I think the Bulls would be a playing team. I don't think they would be an actual playoff team, but we'll see. All right, moving on to the next poll. Question number 2, most disappointing team in the Western Conference. 349 votes, so a little bit of a fall off here, but coming at 8.9% was the Portland Trailblazers. At 19.8%, it's the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been playing better as of late. At 22.6%, it's the Golden State Warriors, and at 48.7%, it's the Los Angeles Lakers. Again, I'm kind of surprised here. I know that, the Lakers are a really popular team in this country. I know that, you have LeBron James. I know you have Anthony Davis. But to me, like, are you really more disappointing than a team that won the championship last year and is currently in the 9th seed, which is the Golden State Warriors, that still kind of has their main core together? I don't know. To me, that's kind of surprising. What do you think, Kwab?
Yeah, I'm shocked by this too. The Lakers were just a product of insanity. Like, you see something doesn't work, but you keep trying to make it work. Like, after the previous season, you saw that having Russell Westbrook with LeBron and AD doesn't work. I feel like they waited way too long to make this trade. They might struggle to get back into the playoff hunt, but I feel like they waited too long. I don't know if they're the most disappointing. To me, I kind of agree with you. It might be the Warriors, because I had them high coming into the season because of some of the moves they made. I was like, okay, I see how they can fit. They still have their core. Clay has a healthy offseason. Like, I expected them to not be like a top of the conference, but still, like, the way they're losing is crazy to me. But the one thing about the Warriors, though, is that if they got in the playoffs, right, who'd you have beating them?
I don't know. That's the weird thing about the Warriors, where it's like they could get in as like the play-in team, number 10 seed, and then make their way to the 8th seed or whatnot. And then I'm like, am I really going to take the Denver Nuggets over the Golden State? I don't know,
like,
bro.
In a seven game, like, they just need to get in. Like, in a 7-game series, it's hard to bet against the Warriors. That's as bad as they've played, as inconsistent as they've played on defense, as much as they've struggled throughout the season. It just feels like they just need to get in, and they have a chance, because you still have to deal with Curry, Clay, Drake. Like, they still have a chance.
I know. It's just really hard for me to kind of even take them seriously right now, because I figured by now they would get it together. I know there's a button that you can push, and we'll talk about this later. But if you're going to ask me right now on this day who's the most disappointing team in the West, to me it has to be the Golden State Warriors. It has to be the defending champions. It has to be a team that has won multiple championships, that has the same core, that is sitting in the 9th spot right now. That, to me, that is the most disappointing thing that you could probably have in the league. Yeah. If the Celtics were the 9th seed right now in the East, we'd be like, what is going on with the Celtics? Yeah. But, the Warriors have, that pedigree. They have shown that they could kind of flip that switch, but they also shown that they can't sometimes because of that one year when they lost in the play-in to the Grizzlies. Granted, Clay was out. I understand, a little bit of a different team. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk about that later in the show, but I also want to bring up this comment right here. It's from Reggie Hammond, and he says, if the Lakers had this squad at the beginning of the season, Lakers would be 3rd in the West right now. They made the additions of Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and Roy Hachimura. 3rd seed is a lot. I think
you can make the case.
I think you can make the case. I think Reggie looks at the standings right now and he says, well, who's 3rd? Oh, I see the Sacramento Kings are 3rd.
No,
maybe, possibly.
Look, because every Lakers game is kind of a big deal when they it's kind of put on blast online. There were so many games that they lost this season that they shouldn't have lost. And
I agree.
I'm not talking about the Pat Bev camera game, which is still the most epic game ever. He had to put back that game, and that wasn't the biggest like moment of Pat Bev. Like that was a crazy game.
Well, he topped it like 2 minutes later. If he didn't do that thing 2 minutes later with the camera, that's what I remember that game for.
Like he had a putback dunk, he hit a big three to go up, and then it was the camera. But that aside, there were so many games where it was they just struggled, where like they could have easily won. I don't want to use the word stupidity, but it was like late game stupidity and stuff where a bunch of games they could have won. Darvin Ham putting out lineups was like four like little guards and like LeBron.
Yeah.
If they had this team to like start this season, I feel like I don't know about third, but they would definitely have a better record. They would
have a better record, but third to me is a huge jump to make, especially when you have AD out with injury, especially when you have LeBron resting. It's not like, having this squad at the beginning of the year changes the fact that LeBron's resting, that AD's resting, that, there are injuries that the Lakers have had to maintain throughout the regular season. Now, would they be better than they are right now? Absolutely. They're the third worst team in the West, and I don't think they're the third worst team in the West roster-wise right now. But to sit here and be like they're going to be third in the conference, I don't know. That's a stretch to me. That's definitely a stretch, especially with the amount, like I said, with the amount of time that AD missed and the amount of time that LeBron has rested. They clearly have shown that, like, hey, the regular season matters, but even to the point where Darvin Ham's like, if we just get into the play-in, like I'm okay. That's the vibe I get from them, at least.
How much of a chance do you give them if they're like in the play-in, if they can sneak in the playoffs?
To win what, the championship or the West?
Just like whatever. Like, do you see them winning a series? Do you see them winning a game? Do you see them winning the conference?
Because if you get in the play-in, you're the 7 or 8 seed, right? So then you're playing either the Denver Nuggets or the Memphis Grizzlies. As of right now, that could change. Yeah. I give them a puncher's chance. I mean, you have LeBron James. And Anthony Davis. I mean, you have a puncher's chance. But to me, I don't think they're as good as many people think they are. I think they're a playoff team, but they have some catching up to do.
Real quick, I want to say this. This team wasn't on the list. I feel like they have been very disappointing. The OKC Thunder. I'm very disappointed in them. I watched a half of Victor Wembanyama, and I was like, yo, OKC is about to be the most tankiest team of all time, and now they're out there playing real basketball. Shay's an all-star, putting up 30. Giddy's a triple-double threat. The draft picks, the Jay Wills, they're out there killing it. I'm like, this is a real team. What is?
What are you doing, Presty? You stack up with all these draft picks this is your moment. This is your moment.
It started out there like, oh, Chet is out for the season. I was like, oh, perfect. We got it locked. We're locked in, baby. We're starting.
Oh, man.
Like, it's going to be Chet. It's going to be Victor. It's going to be a crazy-ass lineup. I'm disappointed in y'all, boy. No, I'm joking, y'all. That's a great game. Wow. The Thunder is so fun to watch. I just want to throw that in there real quick. The Thunder is so fun to watch, though. But.
All right, let's move on to the last poll. Question 3 of 3. It says, team most likely to make a playoff run, in parentheses, not named the Warriors. I feel like that would have been way too easy. 4% was the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know if this would change if this was post-Nate McMillan. This was pre-Nate McMillan firing. At 26.2%, it was the New Orleans Pelicans. At 27.5% was the Miami Heat. And at 42.3%, it was the Los Angeles Lakers. Thank you to the 2,107 votes. Wow, this actually had more than the first one. I know that. The Lakers, like I said, I don't know if it's Laker fans, but...
Lakers fans all over the country, man. They're crazy. There's a lot of them.
But there are definitely Laker fans all over the country. There are definitely a lot of Laker fans on Twitter, for sure. Lakers Twitter is a freaking... I don't know if you've ever been a Lakers space, but it is comedy. Like, it is something that should be sold to networks. It is something that I would tune into on ESPN just to watch a simulcast of Lakers spaces. But what do you think, Kwab? Team most likely to make a playoff run?
Yeah, you can make the case for the Lakers. I would want it to be the Pelicans.
Yeah,
but the Pelicans are basically dealing with the same thing that the Blazers I've been dealing with for years. They can't get healthy. Get that voodoo doctor in there to whatever you need to say, whatever y'all need to do. No, the Pelicans were atop of the Western Conference, like I feel like a couple months ago, and then it's just been a fall off. And Your three stars or your three main players, I don't think they've played that. I don't know how many games they've played together.
Right.
Like if somebody's always out, maybe if they can get back healthy, I feel like they can make a run because they have so many pieces that just work and they fit. Like
Yeah.
there was a stretch where I know Brandon Ingram was out, and then they were starting Dyson Daniels, and Dyson Daniels was just playing amazing in terms of being a defensive point guard, still hitting shots, and they were winning. And then I think he got hurt. Something happens. Somebody always gets hurt, so they've been struggling with that. I would want it to be the Pelicans, but I feel like it's gonna end up either being the Lakers or the Heat, because Heat culture, baby.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think it's going to be Pelicans. I do. Here's the thing. I don't know when Zion's returning, but I do think if you go back to last year, they didn't have Zion anyway, and they made a run towards the end. They beat the Clippers to get into the playoffs. They gave the Suns a nice run for their money, gave them 6 games in the first round. And that's generally the same team that, they have going forward, even without Zion. They're 13-17 without him, but that includes a 10-game losing streak where they were kind of getting their act together and they were kind of figuring out who goes where with Brandon Ingram returning. And I think there was just some kind of chemistry issues there, and every team kind of goes through a lull. And I think that was just their lull. I think they're better than a 13-17 record without Zion. And to me, the Heat just don't have the half-court offense to do so. They seem very limited. The East is a little better than it was last year, so I can't see them making an Eastern Conference run. I think there are 5-6 teams that I could name in the East that are better than the Heat. Whereas the Pelicans, before Zion went down, they were a 3 seed. They were, I think, threatening to be a 2 seed, 1 seed. And you got to think that if Zion does come back for the playoffs or around the playoffs, I do think they can get in and make some noise too. The West doesn't really scare me like it has in the past. Again, we talk about the Nuggets. They're the 1 seed and they lead the league in all these categories, but to me, they don't feel scary. Like the Kings, really, the 3 seed, the Kings. You tell me if you're a 6 seed, like you can't knock off the Sacramento Kings. The Grizzlies, who are this team who Ja Morant was talking about, I'm not scared of anyone in the West, and you're a 2 seed, but you've been struggling lately. There's no one in the West that scares me. So to me, the answer has to be coming from the West, and I'm going to go with a team that has shown that they can get to the top of the standings before everything kind of went to hell with Zion's injury. That's going to do it for pole dancing. Now it's kind of going to some second half headlines. KD trade to the Suns. You alluded to this. You asked if I'm worried about Phoenix, and the question I wanted to propose to you was, do you think that this trade makes the Suns title favorites? I'll actually have you answer that first.
It makes the Nets title favorites.
How does it make the Nets title favorites?
Now, yeah, I mean, this is for the Suns. To make this move it's a title move. You're going for it. Yeah, for them to make the trade and still keep DeAndre Ayton, but I think the Nets didn't want DeAndre Ayton. They didn't want him over the summer either. To keep DeAndre Ayton, kind of have a starting 5 of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, KD, DeAndre Ayton, and somebody else.
Does it matter at that point?
I mean, it does matter, but still, like to have that, to have KD and Devin Booker on the floor at the same time is crazy. From a personal perspective, getting to watch KD these last 2 years of him coming back from the Achilles injury, the man, I was like, the series when they got swept by Boston was probably the worst I've ever seen him play. And he still was average. I forget how much he was still averaging. The man is automatic. Like, he's basically unguardable.
Yeah.
And so now it forces a team to put your best defender on him. Your second best defender is going to try and guard Devin Booker.
Good luck.
They still have the pick and roll option with DeAndre Ayton, who sets solid screens and he rolls even when he doesn't get the ball. Like, it's going to be tough to guard that team. I want to see him play first because obviously they're having KD still coming back from the MCL injury. I want to see how it looks on the floor. But on paper, it looked like they're title favorites. And I think they just signed Terrence Ross.
Yes.
Who's a solid pickup. I've always been a fan of him. It's a title. That's a title team. It should be a title team moving forward.
The Suns are 1,000% the title favorites. There's no question about it. I think anybody who says that they aren't is lying to themselves because they hate super teams and they're sick of seeing super teams. And they'll lean on the fact that some super teams have failed, including the one that Kevin Durant just came from, the Brooklyn Nets. But what you just said is 1000% true. How are you going to stop this team in the half court when you have Chris Paul maybe running a pick and roll? You can go ISO with KD. You can go ISO with Devin Booker. You can have Kevin Durant run a pick and like. There's so many different ways that this team can score, and KD has shown that in Golden State and even in Brooklyn that he doesn't need the basketball. He can kind of fit into whatever you want to do on offense. He can handle the ball if you want. He can go ISO if you want. He can chill on the perimeter if you want. He can do anything you want. I think that's one of the most valuable things about Kevin Durant that people kind of take for granted, where it's like when you have LeBron James come to your team, you got to run the whole offense around LeBron James. He takes over. He's very heliocentric, and that's not saying it's a bad thing, but you kind of have to adjust to what his game is. KD's coming into Phoenix, and he's just kind of like, all right, I'll get in where I fit in. I'll find a way to drop 30 either way. I'm not worried about the Phoenix Suns' cohesiveness on offense. You have Chris Paul and Devin Booker who, just became teammates 2 years ago, and they didn't seem to have a problem, switching over to a little more pick and roll and Devin Booker playing a little more off ball. I can't see a scenario where offensively, at least, this team struggles at all, especially in the half court. They're the most versatile team in the half court right now, in my opinion, that I could think of. Some might say, well, what about the Mavs now that Kyrie's over there in Dallas? Well, that to me, it's just kind of like give the ball to Luka, give the ball to Kyrie, let him cook. That's completely different than what the Suns have going on when you have pick and roll options. You have, off the ball, horns action, like all this type of action that they can do with their personnel. The personnel is crazy. I think the bench might be a little bit of a worry, but I think getting Terrence Ross is huge because he's someone who could light it up. When they go to the bench. And to me, when you're in the playoffs, you can go 7-8 deep. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to people were talking about if they have enough depth, and I don't think it's going to be like you said. You can during playoffs, you play a limited amount of people anyway, and they're more than likely Monty Williams is not going to have more than one of them off the floor at a certain period of time. And even if you want to look at the team from this perspective, they basically traded Bridges and Cam Johnson for KD because
you combine those two players. That's what Kevin Durant is.
Jay Crowder wasn't playing.
Right.
Jay Crowder wasn't playing, and they were still winning. Like they took away those two players, and you added KD, who's an all-world Hall of Famer, generational player. The crazy thing about KD also is that when it comes down to it, like he doesn't need that much space to score. It's like some of the most insane like shot making, like especially this year, his shot making profile was crazy. Now you put him on the floor where somebody has to account for Devin Booker, has to account for Chris Paul, Ayton. Like what like it's
a different version of the Warriors in the sense where it's not the same. It's not the same offense. The Warriors run split action. Their actions are different. There's a lot of off the ball moving with Steph. But the pick and roll with Chris Paul, it's like, well, now I kind of have to help at the rim with DeAndre Ayton. Am I leaving? Like, who am I? I'm going to have to leave Josh Okigio. It's going to come down to, like, that fifth player, whoever is, like, closing.
Who's that, Torrey Craig? Torrey Craig is starting right now?
I'm sorry?
Is it Torrey Craig that's starting right now?
Yeah, I think it's probably will go with Craig. It's going to come down to that player. Like, who are we going to leave open? It's going to be a Torrey Craig. It's going to be a Terrence Ross maybe closing. The starting lineup to me, everybody talks about starters. To me, it's not about starters. It's about who closes the game, right? What lineups can you run out there to close the game? And to me, we're talking about like, well, who is that fifth person going to be? And are going to be able to hit open jump shots? Are they going to be able to maybe even get out of the way at some point? But that's the only thing that I could think about defenses doing, because like, what do? Maybe you're going to play zone and have Booker and Durant shoot you out of it? No. Are you going to double Chris Paul, one of the best passers in the league, off the pick and roll, and give an advantage to KD and Devin Booker? With a 4-3 advantage in the half court? No. Are you going to switch on everything so Chris Paul can cook whatever big man? No. Or Devin Booker can get an isolation mismatch, or Kevin Durant can get an isolation? No. Like, how do you guard this team? Like, I don't really know how you guard this team in the half court. Defensively too, Kevin Durant is very good defensively. I think he's a little underrated defensively, and he's long. Now you got DeAndre Ayton and Kevin Durant. I'm not saying Durant's a rim protector, but that's length.
So he's a rim protector. He's averaging most blocks.
Yeah, and Phoenix itself they're a decent defensive team. They've been better in the past, but they're not like slouches. It's not like they're the Kings. So yeah, to me they're the favorites, man. They are, and I know Boston's over there and they went to the finals last year, but man, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm buying the hype, but we'll see. The other net that got traded was Kyrie Irving. Trade to the Mavs. Trade to the Mavs. Now, I'm not going to ask you the question if you think that they're favorites. I think there's levels to these things, but do you think they're at least contenders where they could probably knock off a few teams like they did last year, make the Western Conference Finals, and maybe surprise a few people, and maybe win the West?
They need what's his face back? Maxi Kleber back.
Yeah.
They just need better defense. Losing in that trade, they lost Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith, who's their best perimeter defender. That's the only thing I think that they're gonna struggle with. I feel like Luka's gonna move the ball, regardless. Like he's going to get his the late alley oops, pick and rolls, shot making. Kyrie's Kyrie. He's like, regardless of how all the other stuff he is, he's still a generational like offensive player. They're just gonna struggle defensively.
That's what I feel.
Yeah, if they can, the things that they can keep games close. It's either they blow out teams or they keep games close. Like they're with the shot making they have with Kyrie and Luka, and if they figure out how to play together, like against the Sacramento Kings at the end of the game, they kind of like were playing hot potato with the ball, and they were struggling. They didn't even get a shot off. But if they're able to figure it out, they might be able to. I mean, win a game.
They can win a round. That's how I feel. I think you catch the right matchup, you can win a round. Last year they made the Western Conference Finals, and a lot of people will be like, "Oh, look at this, look at that," but a lot of it was based off of their defense. They all of a sudden, out of nowhere, became a very good defensive team, which was weird because they aren't typically a good defensive team. Then became like this really good defensive team, and now they're kind of back to being an average defensive team. Like you said, you lose Dorian Finney-Smith, who's your best perimeter defender. Luka and Kyrie now have to play defense at the same time. Not really sure how that's going to work. I think Kyrie isn't as bad as people think he is defensively, but he is. I'm sorry?
No, he's not as bad as people make him out to be. But I'm just saying, like, if a lineup with him and then Christian Wood, it's like
right, and Luka too.
Yeah,
that's not that's a lot of like dribble penetration to the paint, and you get a team that can expose that, and even like I just mentioned, like they could probably beat the Kings in a series, maybe not because the Kings are based off of exposing that, and they run a very active offense there with good passers, and the big men's a good passer. So I just don't know how they're going to stop anyone like the Phoenix Suns. I don't know how they'll stop a team like the Sacramento Kings, if I'm being completely honest with you. I don't know how they're going to stop. The Memphis Grizzlies are a little different. They struggle in the half court, but they like to run. And then you have like Luka, like heavy footed. Like to me, I know you add Kyrie. Kyrie's one of the best point guards in the game, regardless of what you think of him off the court. I think he'll make him a little better in the half court because you kind of have these situations where you can kind of just give him the ball and let him cook. But outside of that, I don't really think he makes a team that much better. I think he kind of raises their ceiling just a little bit, but their floor is still kind of the same to me.
Yeah, I guess they really needed to make the trade just because they realized the mistake they made with losing Jalen Brunson. So they just needed somebody else where they can kind of give the ball to, where like Luka can just relax. Like we talked about it in a way earlier episode, and I was like, it's Luka ball. It's basically every time it was coming out, it's like, yo, Luke, where's Luka? There was someone. And if it wasn't that, it was like, yo, where are we gonna get offense from? Now he has a chance to maybe catch his breath a couple of times up and down, which is big, and they can actually sit him down for like more minutes where he doesn't have to play like the whole game in order for the team to have a chance. So that makes a bit of a difference. I don't know how it's going to work out in the playoffs. Like you said, it's matchups. I feel like a lot of teams in the West, it comes down to who they end up matching up with and how, like, if they'll get exposed in certain areas. So it matters who they match. If they get matched up with a team that has heavy pressure with guards attacking them constantly and getting to the rim, when they have no rim protection, they have your best perimeter defender is Reggie Bullock right now, I think.
Yeah.
So that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. So it depends on the matchup for them to be like decent.
Yeah, but also like don't get confused, people. Mark Cuban did this deal to please Luka and show Luka, hey, I'll get you whatever you want. I'll get you stars. Like it wasn't something to kind of win the championship this year. I think Mark Cuban knows that the Mavs aren't winning the championship this year. I think he's doing everything he can to keep Luka around in Dallas, to show Luka, I will do whatever it takes to keep you happy, to make you happy. Here's Kyrie Irving. Here's a new toy. Have fun.
You don't think so? You don't think Mark Cuban thinks you're winning the West this year?
Well, Mark's a little delusional, so maybe he does. Let's move on to another, move made by, I guess, a conference contender, and that's Russell Westbrook plans on signing with the Clippers. Kwab, what do you think? Do you think this makes the Clippers any better?
It makes them the title favorite in the West.
No, it doesn't.
Is that what you wanted me to say?
I want your honest take.
My honest take is that getting Russell Westbrook for the minimum, because it wasn't like they traded away like a core piece to get Russell Westbrook back. They signed him for the minimum. So to me, it's like bring him in, see if it works. If it doesn't, you sit him. Like it is what it is. Like I feel like there's specific areas that Russell Westbrook can help the team, because there are times when you watch the Clippers, they just, if stuff is not going well, they just lag on offense. Like there's no movement. They just kind of just relax. Yes. They don't move the ball. They don't run. The one thing Russell Westbrook is gonna do, hell or high water, whatever the phrase is, he's gonna grab the ball off the rebound and try to push it and try to make something happen. A lot of times it leads to a turnover. Sometimes it leads to an assist. But the man is gonna push the ball. He's gonna bring energy, and it could make a difference. They've been saying that they needed a point guard for a while. I don't know if he's the right point guard for the stars they have, but Paul George was really, really, really like advocating for him to be on the team. So it's for me.
Why? Why, Paul?
I'm not gonna get in the discourse of the Russell Westbrook hate, because I feel like he's dealt with it enough with signing with the Lakers. Or being traded on the Lakers, which was, we all look back, it's one of the worst trades ever. They should have never made the trade. After the first season, they should have just traded him, but for some reason they wanted to give it another try. People were talking about, yeah, he could be the sixth man of the year when he got moved to the bench. I just feel like if he can provide some form of just activity in terms of fast breaks, energy, because they're the Clippers, for all they have, all the wings, everything they have, they go through a bunch of stretches where it's just no energy. They just kind of move the pass, and somebody takes a contested shot. If he can bring a little bit of positivity, and apparently Ty Lue also had to sign off on this. So if Ty Lue can find a way to work him in, cool. If not, you just sit him. At the end of the day, he's Russell Westbrook, the Hall of Famer, but it's Russell Westbrook. You sign him at a minimum. That's how I look at it as. Before you go, that's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. And then I'm gonna give you the floor, brother.
Russell Westbrook is ivermectin.
Stop it. Stop. Hey, stop the count. Stop the pause. Hey, chill out.
The Clippers are sick.
Chill out.
The Clippers aren't that healthy. And they're wondering what's going on. Like there's something wrong with us. I don't know. I don't understand this.
You can't call a man ivermectin.
And instead of, doing the simple solution, the easy solution, which is getting someone else to kind of fill a spot in and maybe having your players play a little more, they decide to take ivermectin, which is Russell Westbrook, which has not been proven to work at all. There is no empirical data that shows that adding Russell Westbrook to a contender works. This has been tried over and over again, and it doesn't work. Now, that's not to say that Russell Westbrook doesn't have positive qualities. That's not to say that Russell Westbrook is going to kill you. But it is going to say, stop trying this. Russell Westbrook does not raise your ceiling at all. It does. He does absolutely nothing for this team. At best, he is someone you can bring off the bench. He's not someone who you can start with Paul George or Kawhi Leonard and expect him to run a cohesive offense with the starters. He's someone you bring off the bench as a spark, as someone who can get the ball out in the open, like you said, and maybe make something happen. And maybe he affects them positively in that way, some way, shape, or form. But in no way does this make the Clippers title contenders in my mind at all.
Wild statement. Wild statement to make. You don't think like to me, I look at it as if there are certain lineups you could put him in that could be effective. Like if you could have him
that involve Paul George and Kawhi Leonard.
No, not. It could like you could have him on the floor with like.
So at best, he's bolstering the bench, which is important. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's not something that's going to put you over the top to win a championship.
But how do you know though if he can win you a game in the playoffs? Because at the end of the day, when it comes to me, I always look at it this way, right? In the playoffs, there always comes a time in the playoffs where you need a player to like win you a game.
I agree.
A random player to come in and win you a game, and you've seen a bunch of times where like so and so can come off the bench, or it could be a starter that's forgotten about, but just because of how effective he was in that game, it helps you win a game and it helps you win a series. There's certain matchups. There's certain like it could happen. It could. I'm gonna leave. The reason I'm not saying anything because I want to see it before I comment.
But also,
okay.
But also, like players can win you games, but they could also do this thing. They can also lose you games.
I didn't say that. See how I didn't bring that up. See how I I intentionally didn't.
I'm doing my best, Kwab. I am doing my best to stay very kind to Russell Westbrook right now, but also being objective. Being objective.
I'm an objective in this way, right? For them to have signed off on to be okay with the signing because they said when Russell Westbrook was traded to the Jazz, Paul George was basically put out, hey, I want Russ here. After the Clippers made some trades, he's like, I want Russ here.
Yep. Kawhi signed off on it too.
Kawhi signed off on it. Lawrence Frank, their GM, basically said, yeah, we need a. By the way, former Nets coach. We might. I don't know if we need a point guard. That's what the.
I don't know if we're gonna get rid of John Wall, who can push the ball just like Russell Westbrook can, but also has a problem shooting the basketball, kind of like Russell Westbrook does, and decision making. Like you literally just got rid of John Wall to replace him with someone who they're not the same exact player. Don't get me wrong, but it basically does the same exact things when they're effective. Why?
Because they brought in other players.
Whatever. What whatever. I'm not saying it's a bad move. I'm not going to say it's going to kill their season, but I don't think it's something that puts them over the top. I don't think it's something that makes them contenders. You're going to see some good basketball from Russell Westbrook. This is the thing with Russ. You're going to see some games where he's going to have like a triple double off the bench and he's going to win the Clippers a game. He might do in the playoffs, but you're also going to see him making bad decisions at the end of the game if he's in at the end of the game. Now I don't know if Ty Lue's going to play him at the end of the game, but you're going to see some games. Maybe in the playoffs, probably in the playoffs, where Russell Westbrook literally loses you a game because of his decision making and because his shot selection. It's the same story every year. It's the same thing every year. I don't know how people just don't realize this.
You're doing a good job holding back. I'm very
all right. Let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next headline before we get into our power rankings. The Warriors are the 9th seed at the All-Star break. We got into this earlier before we went pole dancing, but I want to elaborate on it further. Do you believe that this version of the Golden State Warriors can flip the switch and go from 9th place at the All-Star break to eventual Western Conference champions, NBA champions?
If they're healthy, they need to be healthy. Like I think it comes down to health. Like I don't know when Curry's gonna come back from that weird leg injury. Andrew Wiggins has been in and out of the lineup. Superstar number 1 pick. Role player Andrew Wiggins. So it's hard. Like if the problem, right, is that if this was any other team, the clear and cut answer would be no.
Right.
Like you're not gonna say this about the Hawks. You're not gonna say this about what I'm saying. You're not gonna say this about any other team that's like you're not gonna say this about like the Bulls. That's like a team that's like down there that's struggling.
Yeah.
But because of who the Warriors are, because of their history, their quote unquote pedigree, like. You're looking at it like, oh, they have a chance. You always think they have a chance. That's gonna be what it is until they don't. Until they're eliminated, you're gonna think that hey, they have a chance.
I feel the same way. I mean, literally even a puncher's chance. And when I say literally, I mean, like, I'm thinking like, Mike Tyson is 45-year-old Mike Tyson, even though like he's in the ring and he's not what he used to be, one right hook is going to knock you the out. Like, you are done. And the Warriors have that. And, when Clay, Draymond, and Steph share the floor this year, they are still effective. It's just getting everybody together at the same time. I think a big weakness in the Warriors this year was, the whole James Wiseman situation in their bench. You bring back Gary Payton Jr. from the Blazers. Maybe he can help a little bit with chemistry and helping you out there, even though I don't think it's that much of a ceiling raiser. It's a weird year. It's a very weird feel this year. And I go back and forth from believing, hey, they could probably win the whole thing too. No, this reminds me of the time that they got eliminated by the Grizzlies in the play-in. And my heart is telling me they can do this. My head's telling me that this team is not going to make it that far. And it's not because I don't believe in them as individuals. It's because Steph's been hurt for most of the year. You have to work out these problems before the playoffs. You just don't flip the switch. I know they're one of the best teams, in the league for the past few years, but to like flip a switch like that for a season where you've been having trouble all year, I don't know, man. I can't really see it happening. I think they have an advantage in the sense where the West isn't really that strong this year. So if there's a year where they can flip the switch and be underwhelming, it's this year. But I'm leaning towards that. This is more of a team that's going to lose first round play-in than they are a team that's going to go through the West and win an NBA championship.
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth about it every time. Like,
yeah, I do too.
There are games I watch them, I'm just like, yeah, they still got it. The games I watch, I'm like, what is this team right now? What is Jordan Poole doing? Like,
what is going on right now?
What's going on right now, man? So I go back and forth on it. I don't know. I think they have a chance, but we'll see.
All right, so now that we're all caught up with the latest around the league, let's end the show giving the listeners the dime's dime. There's 10 cents in a dime. There's 10 teams in the power rankings. I think you get it by now, right? Let's move on to it. First, coming in at number 10, it's the Sacramento Kings. Kwab. Sacramento Kings. What do you think of this team?
Great season. Will be interesting to see how they look in the playoffs, but they're having a great year.
They're having a really good year. I really love their offense. They can score against anybody at any time. Domantas Sabonis has been a good addition to them. They're second in offensive rating at 117.3 points per 100 possessions, but they're also 6-7 in the last 13 games. I think they're falling off just a little bit. So for me, I think number 10 is a good spot to be, even though they're the third seed in the West. Let's move on to the number 9 team, and it is your New York Knicks. Ladies and gentlemen, Kwab, unbiased opinion about my favorite team, the New York Knicks.
This is too high. I don't know why you have them.
How is this too high?
It's too high. It's the Knicks. Like,
they're literally the 9th ranked team they're the 9th best record in the league.
I get it. You're a Knicks fan, but this is crazy. Like, why you have them high? Just because like they started winning some games after they traded for Josh. Right? I watched them play the Nets and like, yeah, cool. Like, you guys beat us, but like I watched the third quarter where Jalen Brunson had a great game and he was picking on Joe Harris the whole time during Black History Month. Not right. So
he was doing what he had to do on Black History Month. Listen, the Knicks 7th in offensive rating, 2nd in offensive boards, and that's with Mitchell Robinson missing a few weeks. They figured it out on offense somehow, even though it's kind of frustrating watching them. They're a little bit underwhelming defensively. I don't like the fact that Tibbs likes to freaking play drop coverage, even against like good 3-point shooting teams. Save it for later. But to me, I think 9th is where they should be, especially because they have the 9th best record in the league. Kwab, stop hating. Stop hating. Let's move on to the number 8 team on the Dime's Dime Power Rankings, and it is the Memphis Grizzlies coming in at number 8. After Jerome Morant made those comments about, not being worried about anybody in the West, the Memphis Grizzlies have kind of fallen a little bit. Kwab, what are your takes on the Grizzlies?
Yeah, they've been struggling, but I think a lot of it is because Steven Adams has been hurt. Like the Dylan Brooks Memphis Grizzlies, they'll figure it out. As long as we have Dylan Brooks, I think the trade they getting Luke Kennard was a very solid trade for them. We'll see. I feel like they're not, again, matchups. How they end up in the playoffs is going to depend on matchups, but they're going to be solid for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think the Grizzlies will be okay. I don't know if they're contenders to win it all this year. I think a lot of people expected that going forward for them. They play a very fast pace. But to me, their half-court offense is going to struggle a little bit, and Jock just can't continue to go kamikaze at the rim every single time and solve all their problems. It works sometimes, but to me, they're a little underwhelming offensively. So we'll see. I think 8 is actually a very good spot for them. I think that's probably where they'll finish too at the end of the year. Let's move on to the 7th team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a team that a lot of people are high on. I know some people who think they're overrated. I think they're kind of polarizing, but I don't want to say they're polarizing because I don't think too many people care about them, if that makes any sense. It's like, how can you be polarizing if no one really gives a damn about you? But the opinion varies. Where are you on the Cavs?
The land. I like them, man. I like watching them. I think the one issue I have with them is that they sometimes play too slow.
Yes, they had the slowest pace in the NBA. Literally the
Why?
slowest pace in the NBA.
Why? When you have Darius Garland and you have Donovan Mitchell, why? And you have Evan Mobley. You have like, it doesn't make Jared Allen. He couldn't even run the floor. It makes no sense. If they would play a little faster, they would be better. I hope they figure that out moving forward. But yeah, I like them at 7. They're a solid team.
Yeah, they're 33-17 with Donovan Mitchell when he plays. They're number 1 in defense, and there was a lot of talk about like, oh, these small guards. Like, what are you gonna do when you have 2 small guards? Well, they're the number 1 ranked defensive team in the league, and obviously it's not because Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. It's the people in the back end like Jared Allen. But to be the number 1 defensive rated team, to play at a slow pace, that shows me that, like, yeah, you're kind of built for playoff basketball, right? Because basketball is a slower pace. It is more half court, and you have people on the offensive end like Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, who can create their own shot, and you have people like Evan Mobley who can, receive or be worked into an offense. So I think the Cavs are a little more dangerous than people think. I think 7's a good spot for them right here. I think they struggled on the road, and maybe that's why I'm a little more hesitant to put them up. All right, coming in at number 6, it's the Los Angeles Clippers. This is a team that has confused me all year. I think their ceiling's really high. I think their floor is kind of low. They've been kind of brutal offensively, which is weird for a team that has Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. But that's what happens when you don't play together all year. Kwab, your thoughts on the Clippers?
I think they're getting healthy as the season has been progressing. So now you see Kawhi and Paul playing more, and they just signed Russell Westbrook. So I mean, it's only up from here, buddy. It's only up from here, guys.
Going into the second half of the season, do you expect them to be a better team? Do you expect them to be in the 6-5-4 range in the power rankings, or do you expect them to be
I feel like I was gonna say that the 6-5-4 range, and I feel like they're gonna still try to figure out how they're gonna be playing moving forward into the playoffs. So they're gonna stay around. They're gonna lose some games, win some games, but they're gonna try and figure out how they're playing and how different players fit in different positions.
All right, sounds good. Let's move on to the next team. In at number 5, it's the Philadelphia 76ers. This is a team that I've been high on forever, that has embarrassed me over and over and over and over again on this show. This is episode 138. You can scroll through all the episodes, and you will hear horrible Sixer takes from me, believing in them. I have them in at number 5. Joel Embiid averaged 34.9 points per game in January, which is ridiculous. After a slow start, he's kind of turned it up. James Harden quietly has had a good year, even though he's not an all-star. Kwab, does this make sense? The Sixers, not number 1, never going to be number 1, but number 5 makes sense.
Not to me.
No, too high.
It's the Sixers, bro. Like you know what's gonna happen. You know what's gonna happen. I've told you this so many times. You know what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna leave it as that. You know what's gonna happen, bro. Hypothetically speaking, this is supposed to be a quick segment, but hypothetically speaking, right? What happens if Philly ends up losing the first round somehow?
Doc Rivers gets fired. That's what happens.
Doc gets fired. Do you think James Harden stays?
I have no idea. He's talked about wanting to go to Houston. Philly, to me, like, I don't understand them. I know they have all the potential in the world. I think their ceiling's really high, but I think to get to that ceiling, they have to do a lot. Like, you walk into the house and you have to jump on the kitchen table, then you have to climb on the ceiling fan, then you have to jump on the ceiling fan to like another piece of furniture that's upstairs. Like, it's like, there's some teams, like for instance now the Suns, their ceiling is like so easy to touch. Like they walk into the house and it's a high ceiling, but there's this pole that just go whoop, touch the ceiling. Whereas the Sixers, it's just like it's impossible to get to. So I'm not going to bank on them getting to that ceiling. Never again. At least I will never pick the Sixers or this rendition of the Sixers. Let's move on to number 4. It's the Phoenix Suns. The reason why I have them at 4 and not higher is for the simple fact that we haven't seen it yet. To me, they're the best team in the league roster-wise. I can't figure out a scenario where a team kind of stops them in 4 out of 7 games defensively. Obviously their bench is a little weak, but with the addition of Kevin Durant, I don't understand how they're not title favorites. Bob, what do you expect for Phoenix for the second half of the year?
Probably to be way up higher than 4. Like I feel like get it rolling, and if they look how we expect them to look, like looking at the names on paper, seeing how they can fit. If it comes to fruition, like it should be up way higher by season's end.
Yeah, I agree, 1,000%. I think this is the lowest or highest that they'll be in the power rankings going forward. Let's move on to number 3. It's the Milwaukee Bucks. This is the team I picked to win the championship. To me, they struggle too much in the half-court offense for my liking, especially for a team that has the ability to give the ball to a Chris Middleton and go ISO, or have Giannis just ram the ball down your throat. They need to improve on the three-pointer a little bit. I think Joe Ingles is going to be huge in the playoffs. I think people will forget about him. And Drew Holiday's having a hell of a season. But, to be honest with you, I think people are forgetting this team is 14-3 with Chris Middleton. They're still really good at defense. They're number 2 in defensive rating at 109.6. Just kind of have to pick it up offensively, which is a weird thing to say because when you think Giannis, you think dominance on both sides of the ball. You think Chris Middleton, and you think, the ability to get a shot whenever he wants. It's kind of weird that they're so bad offensively. What do you expect for them in the second half?
They need to get healthy. I feel like that's the one thing that's been plaguing them the whole year. They need to get healthy. Like right now, Giannis is going to be out with the wrist injury. Also, Middleton is still coming back. They just got Jay Crowder in the trade, and he's, I guess, he hasn't played all season, so he's going to try and work himself back into shape or whatever it is. So I want to see him. I want to see him healthy. I feel like it's them or the Celtics when it comes to the East. So
yeah,
it could be one.
All right, so let's move on to number 2 in the Dime's Dime Power Rankings, and it's the Denver Nuggets. Now, this team, I was doing some research on advanced statistics, and I know that a lot of analytics people love Jokic, and there's a good reason for it, and that's why also the Nuggets are the leader in number 1 offensive rating, number 1 in true shooting, number 1 in assist ratio, number 2 in assist to turnover ratio. They are statistically the best offense in the league, even though it may not feel like it sometimes, because there are other teams that just seem like they feel like they're better. Like the Celtics feel like they're a better offensive team to me. But it's kind of hard to take them and put them anywhere other than number 2. Kwab, quick, Frio Fugazi, Denver Nuggets.
For real. I think you're for real. Jokic might win his 3rd MVP. Like,
wild.
He's averaging. I think he's averaging a triple-double right now. Like they have the way the offense flows when you watch him. It's crazy. Like now, I don't know how it's going to translate in the playoffs, but just they look games. The games I've caught them, I've watched. They just look so dominant.
All right, and finally coming in at number 1, it is the defending Eastern Conference champions. It's the Boston Celtics. To me, I think they've been the best team all year. They got off to a historic start offensively. They didn't miss a beat with Ime Udoka not starting this season or even being their coach anymore. Kwab, it's kind of hard to put another team above the Boston Celtics. What do you think?
Yeah, they've been the best team all year. It feels like, which is crazy. Like the way first of all, this season we talked about this personally and even on the pod. This season has been the most dramatic season ever. Like, from start to finish, and it started with the Celtics preseason with the whole thing with Udoka, and Udoka's out. Robert Williams has been injured. You're looking at it, you're like, oh man, you're gonna struggle a little bit. You're gonna try
I thought they would too.
All of a sudden, you're the best team in the East, and it's crazy. Like they're having a great season. Tatum should be in the MVP discussion, obviously. Just to me, like I said before, it's between them and the Bucks when it comes down to I think who's gonna come out the East, which is crazy. And
I had the Bucks winning the East to start the season. The Celtics got off to a hotter start than I thought they would. I thought there'd be some at least transition period with a new coach and a new philosophy, but it seems like they're doing just fine. And to me, they've been the best team all year. The Nuggets, I think, are approaching a little closer to that. There's a part of me that just doesn't really trust the Nuggets for whatever reason. Maybe it's just, again, they're kind of the Western Conference Philadelphia 76ers to me, whereas I've believed in the Nuggets before and they've let me down. And there's years of evidence of this. I think it might be that. But right now, Boston Celtics in at number 1. Kwab, that's going to do it for the return of the dime.
Hold on real quick.
Hold on.
I'm a little confused, right, in the list.
Yeah.
How come? Why are the Nets not in in the top 10. They make 2 little minor trades, like no big, no big deal. Like
Yeah, no big deal. They just,
2
off in the
little
hole.
trades. Two
No big,
like
no big deal.
No
No
big
big
deal.
deal.
No big
No
deal.
big
They
deal. We
still-
just take the foundation of our franchise and chuck it across the whole country. No big deal. No big deal.
still have
We
a-
just
they
completely
still have a
changed the
winning
whole
record.
roster. There's like 6 new players on the team. The 2 best players in franchise history are on the teams. No big
Yeah,
deal.
no big deal. They still have a win.
No
They have
big
a
deal.
better record than your Knicks, but still somehow they don't even crack the 10.
This team does not have a
that's
better record than the
crazy.
Knicks. This team is 1-2.
That-
They are borrowing a record from another Nets team. I'm sorry. Do not even go there.
I'm looking at I'm a numbers guy. I'm looking at the numbers. The numbers. We
No.
look at the standings.
You stop. You stop. You
Who's
stop
up on
yourself right now.
Who's up on the standings right now, brother? Tell me who's up on the stand.
I want you to enjoy this because this is going to be the last time you're going to say this to me for the next
Nah.
like 6 to 7 years.
I'm crazy. Who do you think you're talking to?
The Nets are not going to be better than the Knicks for the next few years. This is it. Like this is done.
That's
And I'll say this: I think the Nets going forward actually have a decent future for sure, but they're not. I think the Knicks are finally better than the Nets.
it's hilarious. One thing that's great about this. Every time I do this episodes are great, and also our friendship is that you're a lifelong Knicks fan. I'm a
Yes.
lifelong Nets fan, and
Yes.
like we get along by everything when it comes to this. You're wrong, and when it happens, watch. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
I
We'll
need.
see.
This is recorded, so there's going to be evidence. That's all.
Yep.
I can always pull this back out.
Oh, hold on. Starting the season 1-0 and the Knicks going 0 doesn't count. I'm talking like legitimate, like this team is better than this team.
I've said what I've said, and I'm tapping.
All right, whatever. Let's close out the show. If you want to follow the show on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, it's at the Dime NBA. I'm Josh Rodriguez at Josh_Rodriguez_. Kwab is at Kwab, aka Yes. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back in a couple days. I think I want to do more than one show a week. We're gonna try that out. Obviously the NBA, everything changes on its head. By Friday, by Thursday, what we're saying now is irrelevant. So we're gonna try to do more episodes going forward. Until then, rejoice at the league. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll catch you around for another episode of The Dime.